So here's the rain garden, one of them on June 10th, 2021. This is how here I'm having a violet carpet. Got rid of a lot of the weeds and just allowed preferentially violets. Violets are an important host plant for many insects. And there I have carpet of a juga carpet. Some of the leaves are yellowing there on the... One of my goals is to keep all of the ground covered, either in the least case with dried vegetation that you put like grass clippings, or in the ideal in the ideal case like these with ground cover, so that the sun is never touching the ground, because then it's just wiping out the microbial communities. So the milkweed is really going bonkers this year. It was it used to be right in there, right in this area. I had a huge patch of milkweed, and it's moved. I mean, I know milkweed moves, but I didn't know that it abandoned areas that it once was. But it's really just taken off. And were it not for the utility to monarchs, I wouldn't let it be going so bonkers. It's getting close, and some of them are starting to blossom. My poor Montauk daisy has just been demolished by the groundhog. And here are the soon-to-be crop of blackberries. It's quite a good scene from over there, but that's why they're covered, because it's being a unusually hot June, quite a bit like the middle of summer. And so if they get too sun roasted, they will have this defect known as white drupal, and so it needs that sun cover, unfortunately, as unaesthetic as it is. This is the I forget the name. Here's my garden. Broccoli. Those are lettuces that just hung over from last year. I didn't even... Tomato, and these awesome tomato cages I got. What's interesting is how this pumpkin in the area where they have all the space they will need are doing really well, and I stuck one in here thinking the broccoli, chances are good I can harvest it before the pumpkin, and therefore I can kind of double up on space. Look how much bigger that guy is. So much bigger than that one over there. I mean, it's like at least 4 or 5 times. And I wonder, I mean, it's just a small sample size, but you kind of wonder if it's the competition, the nearby competition, or maybe kind of a you know, working together, or something that makes that one get so much bigger, but it's probably just chance. Yeah, this is the wild digitalis. That was the word, the name I was looking for in my head. And it's quite nice with actually a kind of a minor amount. See, this is a juga. It's just like a perfect ground covering of it. Exactly what I wanted. There's a few dandelions in there, but it's pretty remarkable that actually the small amount of weeding you have to do, but you do have to do some weeding. But all in all, it's not a lot, and then you get the right ground covers and they'll just take over. You can see how the ajuga is just, I mean, the ajuga is amazing, but it will be beaten by this guy. This is just the most insidious weed. It's an invasive species brought from Europe, ground ivy, and it pretty much 99% of the weeding one has to do is of that plant. And these are native goldenrod. They will come out in late summer and into the fall practically, but not that long. They actually take up a lot of space for a short duration of pollinator feeding. It's not yet the time of year when there's butterflies all over the place. One thing you learn in butterfly gardening is that butterflies are, by and large, you can see some swallowtails in the early spring, but by and large the proliferation of butterflies is August, kind of a mid to late summer. And here's the milkweed. You see, it's just gonna take over everywhere. I don't know, necessarily take over, but it's you know, roots will find their way almost everywhere. And this is Joe Pyeweed. It'd be much taller. We're having another dry year. This area in the very back I kind of let go wild for one reason. There's only so much area one man, I mean, I've got 0.9 acres, but this guy, the bloody groundhog, demolished it but didn't destroy it. But so I put this fence around it. That's a native, it's a wild form of echinacea, and the pollinators just love it. I mean, one of the features that you learn in growing flowers for pollinators is the cultivated stuff like mums and things that you go buy in the garden store to put in your people's gardens. They don't touch how crazy pollinators are in comparison to native species. And then you realize, you know, plants that have been cultivated for human gardens and flowers weren't cultivated to make pollinators happy, but wildflowers were cultivated by pollinators. So they serve pollinator needs. And unfortunately, I had a beautiful, on my YouTube channel, I have a beautiful video of this bee balm I had before that was just fantastic, and it just died. I don't know why. But here's a new one. It seems to be about the same variety. And I just planted it. Hopefully it will take over. But this garden here has been unfortunately kind of sad because it used to just be a sea of for a couple years, first couple years, a sea of swamp milkweed, which is this. I mean, literally, when I say a sea, I just mean just wall to wall, and it would get up this high. And it's just the last couple years, it is just not coming back. It's been very dry. And yet swamp milkweed is spreading around the yard, not voraciously, not, very aggressively, but it's not going to let it go a foothold in my yard, but it's rapidly retreated from the strong presence it had a couple years ago. And it's because it's been just so dry. That's my interpretation of the situation. Here's one of the most robust of the swamp milkweed, and I actually transplanted it. I put it in a spot that I thought was pretty bad, so I brought it back here. So this guy had his roots taken out and in the size of a small root ball that you could carry in two hands. And yet here it's doing better than any of the others that have had several years. So this garden is kind of in a, and this is quite deep here. I dug this ground here very deep in, 3 feet about, and filled with sand and rocks. So this is a full-scale swale, berm and swale garden, a type of rain garden. And this guy is a volunteer. It looks like mullein, but I'm not entirely sure that it is mullein. But I'm going to find out. In other words, this was a plant I had some tomatoes in last year in a plant container, and it's got to be mullein, but mullein leaves are usually longer. And here's this weed that is just, it is just the curse. At least it comes out easily. But this ground ivy, it will take over. My first attitude is always, oh, maybe, we can work with it, or, I try not to be too aggressive in too heavy-handed. But this, if you don't take this stuff out, it will just cover over everything. It's just abominable. And because it's an invasive species, it doesn't serve any, it's not a host plant for any insects, and it gets rid of plants that are host plants. So yeah, this is the mountain mint. Incredible fragrance, incredible. Just way more amazing than even mint. And it's an amazing plant. It can take just total dryness. You could have a drought year and never water it, and it's just going bananas. It's almost hard to believe how effective it is. And this is oregano, which is actually quite a flowering. Pollinators love it, and it flowers for a long time, just like the mountain mint. This was another garden that used to be as big as this guy was. It used to be just complete forest of tall, big, lush swamp milkweed. And while this is swamp milkweed here, it still has a presence here. It's just, my goodness, it's a tenth of what it used to be. And this is even in the spot that gets quite a bit of water, because this is one of the best, most effective rain gardens I have, because it takes the overflow down this dry, what is usually a dry creek, but during heavy rains, it will just be chung 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 chung, like a train of water pouring, filling that area up like a lake. But this whole backyard was a golf course when I moved in, and I'm transforming it into a bountiful wilderness with the main purpose, aside from my little vegetable garden, is providing habitat for native plants and insects, because the biomass of insects has been decreasing dramatically around the world. That is really one of the most important goals we should have in conservation, is restoration of insect habitats. Starting to rain.